Thought I would spin some yarns today about natives of this land that we now call America, but that wasn't the name of it. Before the European man came over here, it was Turtle Island. I love the Indians. I love the Apaches. I love the Sioux, Lakota. I love Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse and Geronimo and all those names that you probably heard of and a whole bunch that you never heard of. I'm kind of an aficionado of the Old West. And that would include cowboys too, because there were a lot of Indian cowboys and a lot of cowboy Indians, actually. The lines got kind of blurred, especially with the mountain man. When the mountain man first went out west, Lewis and Clark and that whole group of people, and others, a lot of others, well, they learned from the Indians. They wore buckskins and they had knives and beads and coonskin caps and sometimes not coonskin caps. They learned from the natives of this land. They learned how to be at one with the earth. They learned how to live off the land. They were one with Unsimaka. They were one with the Great Spirit and Tukashila. That would be the Lakota name for God. The Great Mystery. It's not really God, it's the mystery. The spiritual mystery. And Indians, and I do have some of the red man's blood in me, Eastern tribes, and mixed with French and all kinds of other good stuff. But my heart is endeared to the native culture and the Indians of this land. They were real warriors, they were real shamans, they were real medicine men, whatever you want to call them. That is more of like a Hollywood term. But people like Geronimo and Crazy Horse, take Crazy Horse for example. He was a definite shaman, as was Sitting Bull. Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse were like this. They were best buddies, and they whipped Custer's ass at the Little Bighorn. Actually, Sitting Bull had done a Sundance ceremony, cutting flesh from his arm, or both of his arms, and during this ceremony he had a vision of all these soldiers being upside down soldiers falling, which was a precursor or a vision of things to come, the whipping of Custer's ass at the Little Bighorn. They had a name for Custer. I think it was Son of the Morning Star, or Curly Hair. Custer actually had a Native American wife at one time. Kind of like, not really a wife, kind of like a mistress or whatever. Of course, he had his American white wife also. He knew of the native ways. He was full of himself. Custer was full of himself. Super egotistical maniac, thinking that he had to make a name for himself by killing Indians. It's funny, sometimes I watch these old westerns and The Indians come flying out of nowhere, whooping and yelling and hollering and screaming and attacking, and and then you got the in the old westerns, you got the poor settlers or the poor bluecoats. Wasn't quite like that, people. Wasn't quite like that. Although I enjoy watching old westerns, just because, again, I'm into that. As you can see on the back wall here, I'm into the Old West, and I'm into all the stuff that went down back then, because that was a different time. Sure, a lot different than what we got now, isn't it? A lot of brave warriors back then. And I'm not going to say all bluecoats were bad. They were people too. Matter of fact, a lot of Indians teamed up with the bluecoats. Why? Because they were warriors, and they realized that the bluecoats were warriors, and they sometimes teamed up as scouts with the bluecoats, because it gave those people that did that a chance to be warriors and to have a horse and to be accepted, I guess, and gave them a chance to practice their art of war, or their art of warriorship. It almost didn't matter as long as they could do that. They were true warriors. Now, am I saying that the Apache scouts that were hired by the bluecoats weren't a traitor to their people? Well, yeah, they were. But right now, I'm just making commentary on their warriorship. So, Sitting Bull was really tight with Crazy Horse, and Crazy Horse, that wasn't his real name. His real name was Gigi, or light-haired one. That was his nickname. His nickname was Gigi, or the light-haired one. Why? Because Crazy Horse had light hair, and they couldn't quite figure out why. He had Indian parents, full-blood Lakota, but yet he came out with kind of like a lighter hair. Tasunke Witko was his Lakota name, Tasunke Witko. They called him his horse is crazy, or Crazy Horse. Why? Because his horse did crazy things. And they would go, oh, that's that guy over there with the horse that does those crazy things. His horse is crazy. And so his horse is crazy became Crazy Horse. That was a nickname. No, there are no known pictures of Crazy Horse. You see, you might Google Crazy Horse, and you'll get all kinds of photos that people think that that's Crazy Horse. Well, it's not, because he never allowed himself to have his picture taken because he felt that it would steal his spirit. He was a very spiritual person. He was real different than people think. But he was a true warrior. He would go up into the mountains for months, meditating, just sitting on the side of a mountain and thinking about things and connecting with Tunkashila, or Tunkashila. It's been a while since I've done videos, so you'll have to excuse me if I have to correct myself on some of these names. Wakantanka was the Lakota god, but Tunkashila was actually part of that, almost like a godhead. And they worship Unsimaka, Mother Earth, and Grandfather Sky, and the spirit of the four directions. Sapa would be the west. Luta would be north. Ki would be where the sun rises, and Ogaga Ska would be almost like the spirit world, but so was the west, because the west held the Thunderbirds, and the Thunderbirds were the Wakanyan. And the Wakanyan were fierce spirits that would come in with the thunderstorms and hide in the thunderclouds. Thunder was a big thing. So were the Wakanyan. And then you had the Heyoka, which was a sacred clown of the Lakota, and it is said they did things backwards, like they would ride their horse backwards, and they would do things backwards. But the real meaning of Heyoka is contrary man, being a contrary man. In other words, being contrary to what everybody thought was normal. They would do things abnormally, according to the society of that time. Crazy Horse was a thunder dreamer, a Heyoka. He wasn't a clown, but he was a spiritual monster. And by monster, I mean monstrous in the sense of unbelievably powerful. He was a thunder dreamer. He could see things before they came. He was a true shaman. But that shamanism ran or coincided with being an earth warrior, because many tribes had that. Take, for example, the Apache tribe, and I did a video on Geronimo. He was one who had the power. Indagde Hogate, he was one who had the power, along with Lozen, the warrior woman, and Katanye was in that mix too. Bunch of supreme warriors. And then you had Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce. And he was a supreme warrior and leader as well. See, leaders in the tribal tradition were true leaders, not like you see here with the politics of today. They never lied. They never did their people wrong. They never led their people astray. They were always for their people. And in order to get into a position of being a chief, you had to prove yourself, and you had to have the vote of the women in the tribe especially, and you had to have a good reputation, somebody that they knew through watching them grow up, that they had good character and they had a code of ethics. And this code of ethics was being honorable and being courageous, being a good leader. You had to live up to this code of ethics to be able to lead your people. And nobody led like Crazy Horse or Sitting Bull or Chief Joseph or Cochise or any of these people. None of them ever forced their way or were voted in as, like, say, in a democratic society politically. They had a form, like I say, of rising to the top, which would be something that came to them from Great Spirit, but the people had to approve. Now, I'm not saying that all leaders in the Indian nation were squeaky clean, so to speak, because they had their little problems. They had their little falling out with each other. And for instance, there's a story about Crazy Horse that is well known. He had a scar from getting shot in the face. Well, how did he get shot in the face? Well, because he got shot in the face by another brave, and that other brave happened to have a wife, a beautiful wife, but this wife, or this beautiful woman of the Lakota tribe, had known Gigi before she married her husband or went off with her husband, and they were always very, very tight lovers, companions, that type thing. And I think the story goes where Crazy Horse didn't have quite enough ponies to give as a wedding gift to her father. And that's where a little bit of politics came in, a little bit of favoritism might have come in, because the father would look towards other things sometimes as far as what he wanted in a son-in-law. They weren't always right. And Crazy Horse was a shirt wearer. And to be a shirt wearer, you had to be well respected amongst the community, amongst the tribe. And at one point, well, he made a mistake and he ran off with this woman that was another man's wife. And the other man eventually found him, and they were in a teepee, and they had a quarrel, and he got shot in the face. I'm trying to remember the guy's name. I can't remember everything here, people. It just comes to me. I've told this story before, but sometimes as I move on in life, I forget things, but it comes back to me. All of this stuff I knew by heart. I still know most of it by heart. I know about the massacres that happen. I know about Sand Creek Massacre. That was a horrendous thing. Promising the Indians that if they raised up I think it was an American flag, or either that or a white flag, or both, that their camp would be unmolested by any kind of action from the Bluecoats. However, that didn't always work out, because there were always people that were trying to make a name for themselves, or trying to look good by killing the quote-unquote savages. Shivington, Colonel Shivington of the Colorado Volunteers, was one of these people who was just a complete maniac. I think he was also a minister, if my memory serves me correct. What did he do? Well, he was trying to make a name for himself, and so he trumped up some reason as to why they should attack this little village at Sand Creek. And so despite the fact that these people had been promised that they wouldn't be harmed or molested if they kept this flag out front to show that they were friendly, despite that fact, Colonel Shivington threw all compassion and care and anything to the wind and attacked this village mercilessly and killed men, women, and children, most of them. Not only did he do that, but he desecrated the bodies of the women and the men by cutting out their genitals and actually wearing them around their neck as they paraded through town after their supposed quote-unquote victory. And you wonder why, that the Indian didn't trust the white man. You wonder why. Because they broke all kinds of treaties, every treaty they ever signed. They stole land from the Indians. They put them on a reservation. They let settlers move in by the hundreds and hundreds of settlers moving in across the land, leaving their refuse and their garbage and their dead bulls and their oxen and littering up trails like the Bozeman Trail in Montana. And you wonder why the native of this land doesn't have a whole lot of real good feelings towards the white man. And not only that, but they just went into sacred lands like the Pahasapa, the Black Hills of Dakota, and dug giant holes in the mountains, mining gold. Of course, gold was the thing they were after. Gold, gold, gold. The gold rush of California, the gold rush of the Dakotas. And they left their refuse everywhere, and they polluted the streams. This is what the mentality was of most of these people that were quote-unquote white. Although they weren't all white, there was blacks, and there was a whole mix of races, Irish, and I'll use the term European man. They came over here and made a refuse dump out of this beautiful land. And they called it America. America, named after Americano Vespucci, who was an Italian cartographer. Columbus didn't really discover America. Americano Vespucci, it is said, drew the maps for Columbus to get over here. Not many people know about that. Just a little tidbit there where the term America came from. It's amazing how ignorant people are about the history of this land. And then there were other tribes up in like northern Arizona, the Hopi. Of course, you have the Yavapai up there, and you have the Hopi up in northern Arizona. Which, see, that was my stomping grounds, northern Arizona, Phoenix, which used to be called Fort McDowell, Phoenix, Scottsdale. All these areas of Arizona I was raised in, and I roamed about all over the land, climbed all the mountains, went swimming in the Verde River and Canyon Lake, and made trips to the Grand Canyon and Sedona. Of course, Sedona was nothing when I was a kid. There was nothing there. Beautiful land, though, beautiful red mountains, and just a real delight to roam around and be in the arid zone. So I grew up around my native brothers and sisters, and I had friends, close friends. The Hopi were beautiful people, and they lived out on the mesas in northern Arizona, Holtville, and some of the towns out there, and they have their sacred mountain, which is San Francisco Peaks, and that's where the Kachinas live. The Kachinas would be spirits, or spiritual forces, or some even say star brothers. And the Hopi built their kivas, round circular buildings that were set into the ground with a ladder going down. And they would align these kivas with the stars, Orion's belt, and the Pleiades, the Chute, the harmonious ones. And then you had the Anasazi, which were precursors to the Hopi, or concurrent with at times. Those were the Pueblo people, were the Utes and every other Pueblo tribe in northern Arizona and Colorado and the Four Corners area. They sprung from the Anasazi people, who were far, far advanced. They had beautiful roads and cities, like in Chaco Canyon and Canyon de Chelly, all in that area. Advanced civilization, they had roads from one town to another, clear across the desert. They had signal towers where they could go up on a mountain, and they had a preset situation where they would go up on the mountains and signal each other for hundreds of miles. They could see from one mountain to the other. So they had communication also. Oh, these people were pretty advanced, even more than people know. And they had wonderful beliefs, and the Hopi were very spiritual people. They had some beliefs that were pretty amazing about the snake dance, and they would dance with live rattlesnakes in their mouth, and they wouldn't be harmed at all. They had a specific ceremony they went through. And these people were also aware of the energy centers on your body. The chakra, the crown chakra, they called it the door to the top of your head. And when they wanted to talk to Great Spirit, they opened up that door to the top of their head, and they had ritual for doing that. I know I'm covering a lot of ground here. I told you I was just going to spin some yarns. Just comes flowing through me, so I jump around, and I'm just talking about all the different beautiful tribes that were here in North America and Canada and South America. These tribes, though, were set upon horribly by the Spanish conquistadors. Came in first. They got here long before the others got here. They were here a long time ago. They came up from South America, and then they spread up into northern Arizona, and they actually tried to build churches up there, and they tried to force the Hopi with their Christian religion their Catholic religion and their monasteries, they tried to force the Hopis into compliance. Hey, does that sound familiar? And they tried to force them to go to church or to the monastery and learn of the Christian God. And of course, at some point, the Hopis saw through it and they weren't having it, and so they started burning them. Burning them at the stake, burning them alive. Well, that didn't last long before the Hopis revolted against them, and them being a peaceful people, it might have taken them a while. The Hitsatsanam were the Hopi. And it meant peaceful people. But they weren't. They could be real warriors too, and so they overcame the Spanish conquistadors and the priests and all that, and did bad things to them. Threw them over cliffs and burnt their monasteries down. And can you blame them? They were real warriors when they needed to be. Notice I'm sprinkling in a little bit of history here about how these people were set upon by the white man, by the white eyes. Well, where did that term come from, the white eyes? Well, the white eyes meant that their eyes were more clear. As to the Native American eyes, they had more of a coffee in the coffee color in the white part of the eye. So the term white eyes came from those whose eyes were much, much whiter, which would be the white man. That's where the term white eyes came from. Wasn't necessarily a derogatory term. It wasn't like, oh, they're savages, like what they called the natives of this land. Savages and killers and almost like implying a backward type people, almost like animalistic. Well, animals aren't all that bad, are they? Oh, they did horrible things to the natives of this land. They gave them blankets with smallpox on the blankets, which literally devastated whole hundreds and hundreds of tribes or tribal communities with this horrible disease, and you didn't even want to see what smallpox looked like. I won't even talk about it. Physically apparent, let's put it that way. Dying horrible, slow deaths, these people. That would have been kind of like what we see today, wouldn't it? Almost like karma, almost like blowback coming from these same people or the ancestors of these same people, or the, let's say, the dark ones, and I mean dark by meaning evil. What are they doing today? Well, you're kind of seeing the same thing, aren't you, right now? And you know what I'm talking about. A purposeful spreading of a disease. Both physically, mentally, and spiritually. And now all of a sudden, you got the reservation all over the world. You got what the natives experienced firsthand. You got that in your face now, so maybe you can have a little compassion about things that happened in the past that really led up to this. It all led up to where it is now. A lack of respect for people of the earth, a lack of respect for the earth itself, the planet Earth, Unsi Maka, or some might say Gaia, or other terms. Regardless, it was a separation of the people from the earth and their commitment to the earth as caretakers and wisdom keepers, elders, people with gray hair, but people with a lot of wisdom and knowledge of the earth and its ways, and also the healing power of the earth and its ways and its herbs. That's where the term curandero, or medicine man, or shaman, that's where that term came from. Those people had a lot of power, and it wasn't abused. Power was given to those who did not abuse what they had and used it for righteous purposes. That would be called good medicine. Good medicine was a term, if something was good, it was considered medicine. That's how you heal yourself, is with good medicine. And good medicine could be a good way of living, a good thing that happened to you, a good way that somebody treated you, a good herb, maybe a little filling for the pipe, kinnikinnick, sweetgrass, sage. All of these things were good medicine. There was a lot of good energy flowing back then, people. You could live off the land and feel comfortable. You had everything that you needed. You had fresh water and grass for the horses and animals, and plenty of game, hunting game. And when they hunted game, it was always with reverence. It wasn't with any kind of lack of respect or just to hunt to have a trophy on your wall. No, they used every part of the animal, and they prayed to the animal and asked it for its spirit. There was great reverence there. I want you to compare this with what we see today. I want you to compare this. This is your holiday gift from Thunder. Oh, I'm celebrating Christmas, but I don't call it Christmas. I call it, if I was to call it anything, I'd call it Yuletide, the Yule season, because the pagans burned a Yule log and they had a much different viewpoint, and it was actually having to do with Mother Nature. I like the spirit of giving, just like, here's another story, the giveaway. The giveaway was when everybody in the tribe at some time would just give everything they had to one person. Think about that for a while. Or if a person was in a hard time, they had a giveaway, and they would perform a little ceremony where everybody brought all these gifts to the person that was in need. A true brotherhood. That's the reality of the people that lived here. Big difference, huh? See that nowadays? See anybody giving you the shirt off their back because you don't have enough? You don't see that. Everybody wants to take. Everybody is a thief. And that mainly would be the government as well. Everybody is a thief. Well, what do you expect when you come in and steal people's land? And see, the natives didn't even think it was their land. They didn't look at it as though we have so many parcels and this is this and this is that. No. They looked at it as the land is a gift. It's a gift to us to use in the proper way, and it will no longer be a gift if it is not used in the proper way, if it is not respected and revered. And you had the holy men, and you had the Wakan, the holy ones. Wakan means holy, reverence. This stuff's just flowing out of me today. It's coming off the top of my head. I'm kind of doing this video as much for me as I am for you, because it's helping me remember the stories of old. It's helping me remember my roots. It's helping me remember what this is really all about. Reverence is what this is about. That's gone. That seems to be something that isn't even considered anymore, reverence for anything. My heroes have always been Indians. When I was a kid, I was rooting for the Indian. At first, no, because the projection was that they were bad guys, and as a kid you look at the Western movies and stuff like that, and they're always portrayed as the bad guys, although I must admit some movies, like those directed by John Ford, put them in a different light. And then later on came movies that really put them in a different light, but that seems to have vanished too. Like Dances with Wolves, I would say, was a great movie. But as I sit here reflecting on this holiday season, these are the things that I'm thinking about. How the way things used to be. And even in the Old West, things used to be a simpler life. Most of the times, the settlers on the plains didn't like being intruded or having civilization pushed on them to the extent that it was, any more than anybody else. Especially the mountain men. They hated to see the encroachment of civilization into the pristine territory they were in. What did it bring? It brought death and destruction and pollution and hateful thoughts from those who were so-called Christians to this beautiful, pristine land. Now look at it. Where has it gone? Well, the Hopi said this was going to happen. And a lot of other tribes too. They talked about emergence. And they talked about going from the fourth world into the fifth world. And the different destructions of the previous world and how that happened. And they were right on the money, right down to how the earth had to renew several times after complete cataclysmic events natural events. I'm not talking about wars here. I'm talking about events like the Carrington event even, or the other events that were happening way back in time. The destruction of the different worlds. And that has proven out to be true. That has proven out to be true. And so what do we got coming up? Well, we had destruction by not earth, water, fire. And it seems to be, now, this is just something I heard or read from Hopi prophecy and from those who are next very close to that whole prophetic picture, is that the next one could be very well again be fire. And of course it might be a different kind of fire. And they also spoke of the Gourd of Ashes, the Hopi. They saw that coming, and the Gourd of Ashes was the atomic bomb, which devastated large parts of Japan and has been used in horrible ways, the Gourd of Ashes. And then they also have spoken of the webs that will form across the land. Could this be highways? Could this be railroad tracks? Or could it even be the internet? The World Wide Web? Well, that's for you to decide. But they spoke of these things that would be happening in a time period where there would be another transition, another emergence from the fourth world into the fifth world. And we're living in the fourth world now, and we're going into the fifth world. And there never were a lot of survivors going from world to world. Only the ones that had good hearts, and maybe we're talking to the supreme source by opening the doors to the top of their head, the crown chakra. This always came about, seemingly, from the planet or the cosmos. Okay. Just like when that big comet hit a long time ago down in Mexico and destroyed all the dinosaurs, and I forget what the name of that is. It's not coming to me. Something Dryer, Hunger Dryer, or something Dryer event. I'll think of it after I do the video and go, oh, damn. But I'm trying to remember and pass on a lot of stuff here today as just kind of like the storyteller, Thunder the Storyteller. Oh, I could talk for hours and hours and hours about the natives of this land, and just natives in general, but I have a special place in my heart for the natives of this land. And you know, there was a wise medicine man once called Fool's Crow. He was the one that was at the event that I don't even know if I want to talk about it, the Wounded Knee thing. He was there counseling all the young braves as they were standing up to the FBI. This is in recent history. Back in the 60s, 70s, with activists like Russell Means and John Trudeau and Dennis Banks. He was their main spiritual advisor at that time. Great, great man. He once said that being an Indian is not about skin color, it's about where your heart is. It's about where your heart is. Where is your heart? Where is your heart? Chute. Where is your heart? Do you think or do you act with the one eye of the heart? In order to do that, you have to be connected to Gaia, Unsimaka, Mother Earth, the spirit of the four directions, grandfather, grandmother. You have to be connected. You have to come from the one eye of the heart. Are you coming from the one eye of the heart? Well, maybe that's something you should think about for the duration of the day. I guess I'll leave it there. I might do more stories later. I've been known to. Aho.